Shalom, shalom. This is Elder E from all the way in the Gulf, tuning in. Thank you for taking this moment to hang out with us for a biblical token and or a biblical nugget. And again, that practically means that I'm not here to spend hours with you, but just about 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes. And we trust that the information that's going to be put out can be edifying and life-changing at that. Today I'm going to be looking at some notes that I've taken throughout the years. And the reason I say that is because the last couple of classes that I did, I was just shooting from the hip. Just kind of like, I do it for my self-edification, for me to kind of like stay on my A game. Sometimes I like to give a class and pretty much not really open up the Bible and just kind of go from the dome. So today, because of the topic that I want to discuss is going to require a lot of coverage, I want to make sure that I kind of remain precise with the information. Therefore, I'm going to go on some of my notes. So these are notes that I have with scriptures and stuff like that to reflect on. Now, what I'm going to be discussing is I'm going to be discussing how the New Testament is really all about Israel. It spells it out. Remember, the scripture says in 1 Corinthians 4:6, and I'm paraphrasing, Paul is speaking to the audience and reflecting on or encouraging them not to look at him and or Apollos as if they're like superstars or anything like that. He's reiterating to them to make sure that they confirm that everything is written. Like, if it's not written, if it's not in the book, if the conviction can't be confirmed as something that's previously written, then don't go for it. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people try to get religion. They'll be like, oh, the Spirit, I got this from the Spirit, though it can't be confirmed in the book. And he's pretty much encouraging, don't do that. Don't look at people, like if there's something special beyond what is written, because if you're not careful, you could puff yourself up. Like I'm the only one. Like, it's not in the book, but the Spirit told me. That's not biblical. And we want to make sure that it's written. Now, what I'm going to convey, I'm going to discuss a lot of titles that are given throughout the New Testament. Like, and I'm going to be more detailed. But for example, like when he mentions chosen, when he mentions saints, when he mentions elect, and things of such, when he gives these distinct titles, I want to show you that throughout the whole New Testament, from Matthew down through Revelation, he's strictly talking to the nation of Israel. And in many instances, it's really the northern kingdom. Not 100%, but the majority is primarily addressing the northern kingdom, as the northern kingdom is a portion of Israel that was divorced by the Most High. Jeremiah 3:8 talks about how Israel was divorced, even though Judah was stiff-necked. Judah wasn't divorced. The divorce only occurred with one portion. And so the whole gospel is about the redemption of that divorced person becoming one again, which can be kind of seen through Ezekiel chapter 37, where it's two houses. It mentions the house of Israel and the house of Judah. It mentions it in Jeremiah 31, 33. It mentions it also in Hebrews chapter 8, verses 8 through 10, where it talks about the house of Israel, the house of Judah, the house of Israel, the house of Judah. And that's really what the gospel is all about. And I want to confirm it by showing you that even throughout the New Testament, you're going to see where all of the books are being addressed, and it's specifically talking to the nation of Israel. A clear-cut example would be the book of James, chapter 1. Verse 1 starts off to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. 12 tribes of Israel were scattered, throughout the nations. So if we take that book, for example, James chapter 1, making references to the 12 tribes scattered abroad, there's really nothing you can pick out of those 3 chapters that's going to imply other nations, because the audience is the 12 tribes of Israel, which started off in the first chapter of the first verse. You see what I'm saying? But as specific as James is, the rest of the books are as specific. But in many instances, they don't mention the house of Israel or Israel. They might be addressed as saints, chosen, elect, called, and such names. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw out the scriptures to show you that all these titles are referencing Israel one way or another, if not the northern kingdom per se, or if not the house of Israel. It's mentioning Israel as a whole, whether it's in a national perspective or per house. All right, so here we go. We're going to start off with, for example, if you go to Matthew and Mark talks about elect. In chapters 24, 31 of Matthew, you got the word elect. In Mark chapter 13, verse 27, you have elect. And so the question is, when those verses are talking about that the angels are going to gather the elect of the Most High. Matthew and Mark talks about the elect being gathered during the end times by the angels. That's what those verses saying. So the audience is the elect. So we're going to go to elect and see what elect says according to that which was aforetime for our learning. So we're going to go to the Old Testament and see who the elect was. According to Isaiah 45:4, it says, "For Jacob my servant's sake, and Israel my elect, I have even called thee." So not only do we see the word elect for the nation of Israel, we're going to come across the word called, where right here in the same verse, you can see where called is even a factor in identifying the Israelites. So, for example, anytime I come across the word elect or election, which is mentioned multiple times throughout the New Testament, you can't refute it. You have to replace those words with Israel, because we have to go by that which is written. See, my conviction is based on what is written, as suggested by Paul and Apollos when talking to the audience. All right, in 1 Corinthians 4:6. So I have a base. I stand on a basis that my conviction is based on what is written. All right. So we went to Matthew, Mark. If you go to let's say Luke is talking to the children of Israel according to Luke 1:16. The book of John, you're talking to Israel according to John 1:31. So we're seeing that the gospel is all about the nation of Israel, whether they're being called elect, called children of Israel, Israel direct. So the gospel's audience is strictly the nation of Israel, identified one way or another. If you go to Romans is identifying the Israelites by way of the called, which we just seen. It mentioned in Isaiah 48:12, you'll see where it talks about the called. So it says that for example, let me just read it. Called, Isaiah 48:12, "Hearken unto me, O Jacob and Israel, my called. I am he, I am the first, I also am the last." All right, that's Isaiah 48:12, where Israel is being identified as the called. And we can see here in Romans, called is being asserted, as well as the word saints. The saints, according to Psalms 55, is also referring to the nation of Israel. Let's go to saints real quick so we can confirm. We're going to go to saints. Okay, Psalms 50 verse 5 says, "Gather my saints together unto me, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice." So those that made a covenant by sacrifice was the nation of Israel. But we also know in Deuteronomy chapter 33 verses 2 through 5 is identifying the nation of Israel. The nation of Israel is being identified as saints. And then throughout those 5 verses, it is identifying that is referring to Israel as his saints in Deuteronomy chapter 33 verses 2 through 5. All right, and that was the book of Romans. In the book of Acts, we actually have the word chosen, which can be confirmed in Isaiah 44:1, that the chosen are the Israelites, as well as in the book of Acts, it's referring, Paul is talking to an audience, and he's primarily identifying the Gentile, and the Gentile that he's referring to is the northern kingdom and or the house of Israel. And there's something that I'm going to cover a little bit later as we go along that's going to get more specific, especially when we're identifying brethren. Brethren is a statement that comes out a lot throughout the New Testament. Brethren, when there's greetings, my brethren, my brethren, what have you. I'm going to really dissect that so you can get a better understanding. And I'm going to be addressing that in 1 Corinthians. I think that might be coming up next. Okay, yeah. In 1 Corinthians, and 2 Corinthians, it mentions the word church. So he's talking to the church. And this is a term that a lot of Christian religions embrace as if it's something new, because it's mentioned anew in the New Testament, and throughout the history of the Old Testament, the word church isn't necessarily identified, though they use it in other fashions. But because the emphasis is the word church, and actually in the book of Acts, chapter 7, verse 37 to 38, it actually says, let's get it. It actually says, let's see, church. We're going to go to the word church. Church says, Acts 7:37, it says, this is that Moses, which said unto the children of Israel, right? A prophet shall the Most High, your Elohim, raise up unto you, and your brethren, like unto me, him shall ye hear. This is he that was in the church, in the wilderness with the angel which spoke to him in Mount Sinai. So it's referring to the nation of Israel as the church that was in Mount Sinai. That's irrefutable. That was the nation of Israel. So here, where we identify church, because remember, it has to be written. So what does the word what does the word mean according to the scripture? Not what some encyclopedia said, not what some religious leader said. The word church, according to the Bible, stems from identifying that the nation of Israel that were gathered in the wilderness, who he spoke to in Mount Sinai. All right, so church, again, it's not nothing religious or what have you. Is identifying here in the book, in the Bible, in the book in the book of Acts, chapter 7, verse 37 and 38, that the church were the Israelites that were part of the covenant in Mount Sinai. All right. So again, when you come across church, like throughout Revelation, when it's all about this church, he's actually talking to Israelites. Because again, I'm basing my conviction on what is written, not on mental assent or like what was told to me or anything of such. You have to remember that your conviction has to be solidified by what is written, based on what Paul and Apollos was conveying to the audience, to ensure that they didn't think themselves to be special. Paul could have been like, oh, this is what I got to say. And he didn't want to take that position. He said, listen, don't do that. Learn from us and make sure that we stick to that which is written, because if you're not careful, we could puff ourselves up. All right? So we want to make sure to follow their example and not go that route. All right? So we're up to the book of Romans. Okay, so I'm going to kind of speed through it. We already covered 1st and 2nd Corinthians, where we seen church and saints mentioned. Galatians also mentioned church and called, which we already covered. Isaiah 48:12 covers called, referring to Israel. Church, referring to Acts 7:37 and 38. Ephesians mentions saints and chosen. Again, saints mentioned in Psalm 50, verse 5, as well as in Deuteronomy 33, verses 2 through 5, as well as chosen, referring to the Israelite being his chosen in Isaiah 44:1. And so you're going to find a lot of repetitive statements in Philippians. You got saints. He's addressing the saints, which according to Psalms 50 verse 5 is the Israelites, or Deuteronomy chapter 33. Colossians, he's addressing the saints. In 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, he's referring to the church. We just covered that the church, according to Acts 7:37 verses 38, as well as 38, is identifying the children of Israel that were part of the covenant in Mount Sinai, where the Most High spoke to them based on the covenant or what have you in Mount Sinai. So again, church. In Timothy, 1st and 2nd Timothy, the word called. So he's speaking to the called ones. And according to Isaiah 48:12, Isaiah 48:12 says that we are his called. Israelites are his called. Okay? Titus, we go back to the word elect, where Titus is talking to the election. Isaiah 45:4 shows you that the elect are Israelites. In the book of Philemon, we're talking, he's addressing the church. Again, Acts chapter 7, verse 37 and 38 identifies the Israelite, those that were in Mount Sinai. Hebrews, and here's the one that I wanted to kind of get to when it came to the word brethren. So in the book of Hebrews, he's talking to the brethren. Now, when you're reading the chapters of the New Testament, you're going to come across brethren, where brethren are constantly being addressed. And one of the things that I wanted to consider in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, is that he's talking to the brethren, and then he makes mention in verse 2 where they were taken away as Gentiles. They were taken away as Gentiles. The Israelites were taken away as Gentiles. And it's interesting because in many translations, you'll find the word Greek translated to Gentiles, or Gentiles translated to Greek, for the simple fact that where Greek is specific, when we teach Greek is the Jews that were Hellenized. So when he said there's neither Jew nor Greek, he's talking to the two houses, the northern and the southern kingdom, or the house of Israel and the house of Judah. What the new translations try to do is they'll change the word Greek and put Gentiles as if talking about all the nations, and that's incorrect. That's not proper. All right, and that's very key. If you focus on 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, and you'll see where the brethren, which are Israelites. Matter of fact, here, let's go to brethren. Let me take it to a few verses so we can confirm, because brethren is it's a very intriguing terminology, and I want to make sure that we have it confirmed. In Leviticus chapter 25, verse 46, but over your brethren, the children of Israel. So I'm paraphrasing the phrase. I don't want to read the whole verse. It's a long verse. But within Leviticus 25, verse 46, there's a semicolon, then it continues with, but over your brethren, the children of Israel, ye shall not rule one over another with rigor. What I want to address there is that the brethren being addressed are the children of Israel. In 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 24, it also says, brethren, the children of Israel, within the verse. First Ezra, this is in the Apocrypha, chapter 1, verse 5. It concludes the verse by saying, your brethren, the children of Israel. That's 3 times already. In the book of Acts, New Testament, 4th time. And when he was full 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Israel. The Bible says, let a matter be established with 2 and 3 witnesses. I just gave you 4 witnesses where brethren throughout the Bible is making reference to the children of Israel. All right? So that one is very interesting, because those brethren are identified as were Gentiles, meaning that they became Gentiles by deed, by character, and things of such. Not because they were bloodline Gentiles, but because of their character. All right? So 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, where verse 1 makes reference to the brethren, and then verse 2 goes on to identify them as were Gentiles. Not that they are Gentiles, but that they were Gentiles. All right? That was Hebrews. James, we mentioned James, 12 tribes. 1st and 2nd Peter. Peter talks about the elect. 2nd Peter talks about the called. 1st John talks about brethren again. 2nd John mentions elect again. 3rd John mentions brethren again. Jews, sanctified, and saints. Sanctified. Let's look up the word sanctified real quick. I'm almost due for time. So sanctified. Let's see. The word sanctified also shows up in the Old Testament as Ezekiel 37, verse 28, where it mentions Israel when it says, I, the Most High, do sanctify Israel. So when it mentions sanctification, we're talking about the nation of Israel. All right, and we're going to Revelations. We also mention servants and churches. All right, so guys, I want to conclude there because I'm up to my limit. I'm up at 20 minutes already. And I wanted to make sure that you understood that all throughout the New Testament, the whole New Testament is making references to the nation of Israel, regardless of the title, which can be confirmed through that which was aforetime. Everything that was in the Old Testament identified the nation of Israel with all these different titles, saints, elect, this, that, or whatever. I just showed you that throughout the New Testament is identical. All right, and then Hamashiach Yahushua, or Jesus, confirms the way Matthew starts off is by saying in 1524 that he only came but for the house of Israel. Why is that logical? Because there was the divorce with Israel, though not with Judah. There was a divorce. Jeremiah 3:8 shows you there was a divorce. So when that divorce occurred, there needs to be a redemption. There needs to be a redemption which can only be done through death. That's why Hamashiach Yahushua, Jesus, comes and dies to redeem the divorce portion, which he confirms in Matthew 15:24. All right? So listen, looking forward to hearing from you as you consume this information. If you have any questions, concerned about the information, I'm looking forward to hearing from you. All right? Shalom.